Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast, and a very special welcome to a man who is coming in from Dallas, the Dallas area, Dallas in Texas. He's currently the Chief Sales Officer of a company called Impulse. But when he's not doing that, when he's not running sales teams and changing the world in the healthcare sector, he's actually an author, he's a professional speaker, and he's a leadership expert. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome to the podcast, Mr. Jim Carlough. How are you?
Darren, thank you for having me. I'm excited. This is the first podcast that I've done across the pond to Australia. So this is going to be fun.
Excellent. Good to hear, because you were telling me just before we press record that you've done about 70 podcasts, and you mentioned the country Nigeria. And then in the next breath, you mentioned Switzerland. And I'm thinking, man, I am talking to a global megastar here, which is great.
I've also had Singapore, Great Britain. So I'd have to go back and think, but yeah, those were the ones that stick out.
Amazing. Well, you're talking to an Aussie, so what I'll do is I'll do my very best to slow down. I must warn you, though, that if I get excited about certain topics, my speech tends to speed up. And I learnt that I was in Vegas actually last year doing a conference, and they were saying, whatever you do, you're going to have people in your audience that have English as a second language. So please regulate your speech tone and your speech speed. But of course, I get on stage and I get excited. It's just like the Roadrunner. Anyway, I'll try my best not to do that. Jim, really looking forward to this conversation. We're going to talk about your recently released book, which is a bestseller, The 6 Pillars of Effective Leadership, which is a roadmap to success. We're going to delve into that. But before we do, love to know a little bit about your background. I always like to just delve into my guest background and understand what was the catalyst for you moving into, first of all, sales, but then as you've gone through your career, because you've had a career over 30 years, sales leadership, and particularly the catalyst for writing the book.
So the catalyst for writing the book comes out of the leadership experience I've had for the last 30 years. And you probably see this in Australia as we see it here in the United States. We find people that are very successful at being an individual contributor, and we make them a manager, but we don't give them any tools. And we say, okay, Darren, you're going to be a manager. Here's your team over here. Go manage them. And in mentoring people over the last 25 years, I've seen the common missing links and characteristics which have made a difference in my leadership and created a following of people who continually want to come back and work for me. And so I said, there's something here. So when I started thinking about retirement and thinking about, I can't go fishing every day. My DNA is not made for that. You know, what could I do to give back? So I said I could help mentor and speak about leadership principles and help people. And so that's what really started the concept of the book. Excuse me, because my thought was, if I don't have a book and just call somebody and say, hey, Darren, you want to hire me? I'm a leadership speaker. You're going to say, no, I don't know your name. What do you published? And you have no credibility.
Yeah.
So I figured I'd write a book. Never expected it to have the success that it has. I just wanted to use it as a catalyst to be able to say, I'm an author.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can say I'm a best-selling author. And it
right.
Sounds even better. But that was the premise from behind the book, to really promote the things I want to do, that I love to do, but post-retirement.
Nice. And I was saying before that a lot of people use a book as a credibility, I guess, starter, but at a credibility confirmer, for want of a better term, that people can actually get access to you and some of your thinking without actually necessarily having to meet with you, or in some cases work with you. So being able to get access to people that perhaps you never meet but still have an impact on people that you never meet is is a great thing. And that's how I look at podcasting as well, because we don't know who listens to this. We don't know, apart from which country they're in, we don't know what sort of role they have, but just rest assured that you're having an impact,
Well,
which is fabulous.
it's interesting you say that. The other night, Monday night, I spoke at the University of North Texas,
Hmm.
and it was a marketing class, senior level people ready to graduate in the spring. I presented my book and my kind of keynote thing, and geared to what they're about to go through. And afterwards, there were about 100 kids in the room, adults. There are 100 adults in the room. About 20 of them stayed afterwards to just come up and talk to me. And two of them, because I gave out a couple copies of my books to
Okay.
engage the crowd,
Yeah.
um, actually said that someone in the university had recommended my book to them in the marketing class before
Well,
they even knew I was coming in to speak.
there you go.
And I was like, well, who do I thank? And they couldn't remember who it was, but it wasn't the professor that invited me in to speak.
There you go.
But yeah, so that's very flattering.
Global impact, my friend. Global impact, even if it's local. So if we go back, how long have you been in sales? And you mentioned before that often, and I fully concur with that, a salesperson who is operating at a high level of performance and potentially a high level of potential often gets the opportunity, but they're literally thrown to the wolves. There you go. There's your team. Off you go. Through your career, what was it that I guess led you to A, want to be in sales, and how would you get in sales in the first place, but to make that transition, because not everybody makes a successful transition from sales individual contributorship to sales leadership.
So that's very true. And there's been very few roles that I've had that I was actually in sales myself.
Okay.
So I started right out of college in sales management. And so the first team that I managed was a group of salespeople, which when I look back to how I manage today, to how I managed back in 1983, I think I have to find these people and apologize because I I didn't know what I was doing, and nobody gave me that roadmap. And there are some things that happened in that first job that probably could have been handled a little bit differently or a lot better.
Mm.
But so I've been in sales and I got into sales management. I've also spent some time in operations as well. But the majority of my career has been in sales and in sales management. And so I originally wanted to be a lawyer, but when I graduated with my bachelor's degree, I said, I think I need to work and pay off some of these school loans and never went to law school.
So interesting that you went straight into sales management. How did that happen? Was that just was it fortuitous? Was it how did because normally people have to do a bit of an apprenticeship in sales to then have well the credibility, if you like, to jump into a sales management or sales leadership role.
Well, I think a couple of things happened. Number one, I got a phone call from a recruiter who was looking to place people. And my first job right out of college, while it was in sales management, it was for a very, very small company.
Hmm.
And wasn't really a high paying sales position, but it was sales. And
Mm.
it got my foot in the door and got me some basic education. And 6 months later, I was hired as a sales manager. So I really didn't spend much time there. And from that point forward, my entire career has been in healthcare.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And with that, because I'm intrigued in terms of some of the lessons. So I always talk about the fact that it's important to continue to educate yourself, find good people to elicit strategies from, soundboard, have buddies, have coaches, have mentors. Who is there anybody specific that has helped shape you in your career that has, I guess, led you to be successful in the work that you do? And is any of that sort of come out in the book, if you like?
So there's a lot of that comes out in the book. And one of the things that I did in the book was with each chapter or with each pillar, I not only talk about it, I talk about an experience in my career, but I also align that pillar to other recognizable leaders from around the world who use that pillar in their leadership, such as Nelson Mandela, as an example.
Mm,
Um, and so people can not only read how I did it, they can read how Nelson Mandela did it. And then I give them steps for how they could implement that pillar.
hmm
And so I wanted it to be truly a roadmap that if somebody wanted to get better at something, it was all encompassing and concise.
mm,
There is this, if you read reviews from my book online, which are very favorable, the one consistent theme that you'll see is the book is concise and to the point.
yeah.
It doesn't belabor the subject matter and stretch it out into, you know, 20 pages of theory on, on something. So anyway, but it seems to be working.
So you're saying it's practical rather than just full of theory and models and stuff like that.
In fact, it's all, in fact, people, if you really look at the pillars, most of them are soft skills,
Yeah.
and but there are soft skills that you have to learn on your own that you can't just simply pick up a book for. So, and that's where the stories come in because you can then instantly relate to how I was in that situation and what transpired.
So you mentioned in the book, and part of your philosophy is that leaders are not born, that they are developed, which I fully concur with. I will say though that because often people ask me the same question, what's the most important attribute around leadership? And I don't see myself as a leader, so how can I possibly be a leader? Which is a self-belief sort of challenge. Um, what are some of the, I guess, the key lessons you've learned around just building belief in your ability to lead people, particularly as in your younger career, you went from a short stint in sales to then a sales management. And we'll talk about some of the key pillars, but from a credibility point of view, was there anything specific that you did to, I guess, earn the right to lead your team, given that you might have been around the same age as some of these people? You might have had people in your team who are older, more experienced. How did you develop, I guess, credibility so that they would listen to you and be led by you? They want to follow you.
So, because you're asking the question, we're going to get into the most important pillar because it was something that I learned the same year I graduated college. In November of 1983, I was elected to a city government position in the town I grew up in. It
Okay.
was a city councilman position at the age of 22,
Wow.
youngest ever to this day. Shortly after the election, the city manager asked me to come and visit with him. And he sat me down and we started talking. He congratulated me. He said, I know you're going to be successful. You're smart and you project yourself very well. He said, but I'm going to ask you one favor. And I said, okay. Now, in these days, in the political climate in the United States, a favor could mean a lot of things,
That's
and
right.
most of them not good. So I was a little worried, but I relaxed. And he said, what I want you to do is every night when you go to bed and you put your head on the pillow, I want you to ask yourself one question. Now, mind you, he's talking to a 22-year-old,
Yeah.
and he's a much older gentleman.
Yeah.
But he said to me, you ask yourself, did I do anything today for my own self benefit that was at the expense of another individual, group of individuals, or organization?
hmm
And I went, whoa. And he said, if you answer yes to that question, you have to do two things. First thing is you need to figure out how to unwind it. Second thing is you need to figure out how to never repeat it.
hmm
I've asked myself that question every night since 1983.
Which talks about servitude.
And you talk about integrity
Mm,
and you talk about not putting yourself first or for your own benefit, but to be really thinking about what you're being asked to do. And
mm,
I have led my entire professional career that way. So when you ask the question, how did I get that credibility? that's how I got that credibility. Because not only did I have a college degree, I had a little sales experience, but I was an elected person to public office.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though it wasn't, I mean, it was a part-time position, it was a small community, but it gave me that credibility.
And the question that comes off the back of that, Jim, is asking that question every day since 1983. I would say that you're now into a habit that you just do this intuitively because it's like a rut, a positive rut that's been developed. You just do this unconsciously. The question I have for you around that is how challenging was that to do, particularly in the early days, and as a 22-year-old that perhaps is still trying to work out their place in the world and what the world looks like and how challenging was it? Did you have to grapple with things? Were you placed in situations or had choices you had to make where that was consciously in the front of your mind that you led down a certain path?
There were situations that I was confronted with after that conversation that kept me on, that kind of was like, in the comedy shows, you have the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other,
Yes.
where you're thinking, I'm in this situation, how am I going to handle it?
Yeah.
And both personally and professionally. And the one thing I can tell you is I never wavered from that pathway. And I can tell you stories of where I've worked with people who have said to me, you always do the right thing. And I don't think I always do the right thing. I think I always do the appropriate thing,
Yeah.
but it's interesting to be able to say that you've led your life with integrity.
Mm.
And it's also amazing that it's also spilled up often to my children who are now grown adults. Um, and so it ruined their life. But the other thing is, I also had a
Ruined
good,
their life.
I also believe that my parents did a great job as well.
Yeah.
My dad had been in World War II. He didn't see action, but he was in World War II. Um, Unfortunately, when I was in second grade, I took my only ride in the back seat of a police car. Um, and my brother and I were picked up from school and taken home by a neighbor who was a police officer, where when we got there, we learned my brother had been killed in Vietnam.
Wow.
And that changed the family dynamic a little, but it didn't change the way we were raised and taught how to give back
Hmm.
to the community. My dad was a local volunteer fireman. My mom was a den mother for Cub Scouts. And, we all volunteered at something as we were growing up.
Yeah.
And so I think that instilled from an early age that we were going to be different.
Mm.
We didn't have a lot of money. There were days that I wondered how we had enough food on the table. My dad was a factory worker. Originally, he was a carpenter.
Hmm.
But when I say the leaders are developed, if you look at my dad, who was a carpenter, his dad was a mason. His dad, or my great grandfather, was a chicken farmer.
Yeah.
There's no C-suite in any of that.
Yeah.
So everything that's happened with me has been developed from the time I was 4 or 5 years old all the way through today and will continue to evolve.
Mm. It's interesting you talk about that and taking that all through your entire career. I'm wondering because and being in sales as well, I know from personal experience there are certain things that happen and there are certain different characters you have in businesses and some unfortunately have a position of influence and power that maybe have self-interest before the interests of the greater good that can lead to certain behaviors which might bring into question integrity. So are there, because there'll be people listening to this that at least intellectually will understand, yeah, integrity, it has to be a number one of the number one values that you have because everything you do is it should be with integrity. And sales, by the way, is ethical, even though it potentially has a bad name in some quarters. I'm interested in experiences where perhaps you've been tested around that and where you stood firm on the integrity and what happened. Did you have to pay a price throughout your career where perhaps the values that you had around integrity and the values of maybe a senior leader or a company didn't quite match, and you had to make a decision.
Yeah, there's a couple of times that I've ended up in a position reporting to a person that I thought lacked integrity and was doing things because they were told to do certain things that I didn't believe in.
Mm,
I won't name the company, but there was a situation where um, my boss and I were going to visit a client, and on the way to the meeting, the boss said to me, we had sold them software, and they also had a right to the source code of the software because they had negotiated that right. And on the way to the meeting, he advised me that it was my job to tell them that we're taking that right away.
right.
And I said to him, well, I'm not going to do that. And he literally banged his hand on the dashboard of the rental cars I was driving. And he said some words that I won't repeat to your listeners to emphasize the point that that was my responsibility and my job. And I said to him, but I can't do that. I've read the contract and I've talked with our legal department. Doing that will end this customer relationship. We have 15 people on site 365 days or 52 weeks out of the year.
Mm,
That contract will go away
mm,
just because somebody wants a provision taken away that they previously gave. And I stood fast on it. And um, I then went a few weeks later to HR and said, I'd like to look for another position in the organization. And my boss comes to see me because they have to let him know. And he said to me, he said, Jim, he said, you're not eligible to look for another position because you're failing as a leader. And I said, well, that's interesting, Jim. Well, I said his name. I've never had a review from you, and the reviews for the last 5 years have all been on a scale of 1 to 5 above a 4.
mm.
So if I'm not performing, why hasn't action been taken? It doesn't matter, he said. I've tagged you as not movable. So I ended up finding another job and leaving. I was not going to stay in that environment. My integrity is too important to me to give up on that.
It's a great story, and that would have taken courage because you may have had, it sounds like you had fully invested in that organization, and it also bears truth then that people tend to more often than not leave an organization because of their one up or two up manager. And the fact that your manager, who goes by the synonym of Jim, but he's probably his name is probably something other than Jim, didn't have the integrity to lead and do the right thing. That says to me that there was a level of trust that was broken because maybe there was a self-interest element to it,
Yep.
whether it be
And
for him or for the company.
and the moment you lose trust in your manager,
Mm,
it's over. In fact, I say integrity is so important because, for example, the other two other pillars are compassion and empathy. A leader who's not transparent and operate with integrity will not be believed if they try to show compassion or empathy.
yeah.
And they will never gain the support of their organization or team.
Mm,
And one of the things that I think is so important is we need integrity today more than we ever have around the world.
yeah.
And maybe I'll be known as the groundswell of the integrity movement at some point because I've been preaching this, but I'm truly believe that we have gotten sideways with integrity in a big way, in a big way.
So what do you say? Because I don't want to sort of take this off a reservation, but what you just said is really important because if you do look at, I guess, global macro politics or global business, and the people who are kind of visible in the marketplace, if you put those people up and you put the word integrity next to them, there's a bit of a mismatch, right? So do you think that people in those sort of positions think or believe they have some integrity and perhaps have a different interpretation of what integrity is? Or do you think integrity is just no, it is the true north and you cannot hide away from it?
I don't believe that they believe they're operating with integrity. I think they're blinded by their own self ego and self fulfillment that they're seeking to get.
Mm,
One example of that is take even a lower level person in government, like a senator, whose government salary is, I don't know, $200,000 a year. They're in politics for 2 or 3 years and they're now worth $5, $6 million.
mm,
How does that happen when you're serving the public?
mm.
I just, to me, the math doesn't add up. And, they can collect these donations and PAC money and then they can keep it. And I mean, it's just, to me, there needs to be, at least in this country, I think, some serious reform
Mm.
because we're guided by lobbyists and people who are influencing decisions that impact lives.
Yeah, because I often wonder decisions that are made by business people that I'd like to think that they make decisions with the best interest of the business and the people and the stakeholders. And maybe that's just me because I've got an optimistic view of the world. But I just wonder whether some leaders take this word integrity and I guess they manipulate the definition to suit their own means and in their own head they think they're operating with integrity, but it's according to their own warped perception of what integrity means for them. But the experience that people have is completely different. That brings into question that person's integrity.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. The most influential leader that I had the pleasure to work with was Ross Perot.
Mm,
And he was an amazing man. He would do anything for anybody. He returned everybody's phone calls. He did things for people that he didn't even know because they came to him for help.
hmm
And he treated his employees the same way. If you had an employee on your team that had a serious illness or someone in their immediate family did, you had to report it to his office and work with his office to make sure they got the best care possible.
Yeah.
And we also had an obligation to take care of the family.
Mm,
Who does that today?
yeah.
Nobody.
Mm,
I've never seen it again to that
yeah.
extent.
Yeah. And it begs the question, doesn't it, that leaders, and John Maxwell talks a lot about this, that leaders who demonstrate the highest level of integrity, they don't have to encourage their team to follow them. Their team choose to follow them because of the example that they set, which is servitude, not about them. It's how they can, I guess, lead with that level of integrity that is unquestionable, and they'll always do the right thing.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
So with that, because I want to talk about the other five pillars. I'm curious though, because when I'm looking through them, I'm thinking, okay, there's one that I would add to that. I'm not saying there should be seven, but it might be that this one is part of integrity, and that is the word courage. So if you think about courage, um, do you think about that as part of, say, compassion and empathy, or is it more a case of if I'm a person of impeccable integrity, it means that I'm going to have to have the courage to stand up against, similar to what you did against your manager that was saying, "Hey, you need to change this contract." That would have taken courage because you're hanging on to the value of integrity. So
Yeah,
how do you?
I would put courage with integrity, and I also put transparency with integrity as well.
Mm,
So that the truth be told, I started with a list of 18 characteristics. And I said, if I write a book about 18 things, nobody can implement them.
yeah,
It's too much.
yeah,
So I had to narrow it down. But to me, I would put courage as I do transparency in with integrity, because all of those things will cause people to follow you and believe in you. If they know you're being honest with them, they know you're being transparent with them, and you're telling them, and you're keeping them informed. Now, obviously, as leaders, if you're a publicly traded company and you're about to announce you're going to buy somebody, you can't tell your people ahead of time or we're all going to go to jail.
Yes.
So there are some things that you can't, but in terms of transparency, my teams know everything that I know.
Mm.
And it's my job to make sure that they're informed.
Yeah.
There should be no surprises. And I often tell them, I don't want a surprise. I want to know when my phone is going to ring.
Yeah.
And I was raised that way in corporate America, to make sure that you were informing and you were so aware of what was going on in your division or parts of the business,
Mm.
to be able to inform leadership.
I love that. Love that. So if integrity is number one, what's your second favorite?
I go between compassion and empathy.
Okay.
And people sometimes confuse them, and sometimes people lump them together, and
Yeah.
it depends on the situation.
Yeah.
But I do very much believe that those are learned skills, and you can't just simply pick up a book unless the book is full of examples of true examples of where they were
Yeah.
and how they came about. And
Yeah.
I'll give you one with regard to empathy, and it's a true story. When I worked at a technology company that made claim systems for the health insurance industry, I inherited a team of one of my several teams that operated and programmed and repaired an old claim system that was made in the old green screen technology. Remember those days?
Yes. Yes.
We had come out with Windows-based capabilities, and we were going to sunset the green screen. I had a team of 25 people in California, and I had to figure out a way to tell them their jobs were going away, but that I needed them not to walk out the door,
Hmm.
because we had 30 some customers we had to take care of. And we couldn't transition everybody at one time, and an implementation would take 8 to 12 months. So I had to come up with a way to convince them to believe in me, that we'll do the right thing, and that a way to make sure people didn't leave prematurely.
Mm.
And I wrestled with it, and I did not know how to handle it. I asked mentors that I had, and they were like, good luck. You haven't heard this one before. Go for it, do what you want. So I actually came up with something, and I met with everybody as a total group, and I broke the news to them, and I made them three promises, or three commitments.
Hmm.
Commitment number one: every individual would know with a minimum of 6 months advance notice when their role may go away, based upon when a customer would transition off the product.
Hmm.
Number one, minimum 6 months. Commitment number two: if any of those employees that were going to be rolled off wanted to learn the new products and services, we would train them, and I would make that training available during the workday,
Hmm.
not taking away from their personal time.
Yeah.
Made a third commitment: if you decide you don't want to learn the new technology, and you decide you would rather leave the company and go look somewhere else, I will personally help you find a job that meets your personal goals and your family's financial goals. And I will do that with you.
Hmm.
Made those three promises. All I wanted, Darren, out of this was not to lose somebody prematurely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody left before it was their time. Stranger thing happened 2 years later. It was going to take us over 3 years to transition those full 25 people off. About 2 and 3/4 years into this process, we did an employee satisfaction survey. About a month after that satisfaction survey was done, I get a call from Human Resources, and they want to come and visit with me.
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, this ain't good. So I figured if they walk in with an empty box or with my boss, I'm in trouble. But these two women from HR came and they asked if they could sit down, and we sat down. And they said, we did an employee satisfaction survey, and we need to talk about one of your teams. I said, okay, what team? Well, the one in California that you're downsizing.
Hmm.
I said, okay, so we're downsizing it. I would expect the results to be extremely bad.
Yeah.
Is that why you're here? And they said, no, we're here because we don't understand why they're the happiest employees in this entire company. And we have 20,000 employees here. And they were the happiest and most satisfied. I never expected that. Never expected that. But we sat there and we talked about it, and we realized that I took every worry potentially that someone would face when they're told their job is going away and put it on my shoulders.
Yeah.
And they had never heard of that before. And I said, I wrestled with what I would tell them, and I wrestled with what would I want my boss to tell me if I was in that position. And so I put myself in that position and I took on that weight.
Mm.
And not only is that amazing, but every year on Bosses Day, at least a couple of them still email me and thank me for being the best boss they've ever had.
There you go. There you go. And you were doing that because I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but you were doing that because you truly believe that was the right approach because you were basing it on integrity, which then goes back to the conversation you had at the age of 22, where you asked yourself that question before you put your head on the pillow, and that has now led you to behave the way you behave. And there's a prime
Correct.
example.
That is absolutely correct. Absolutely correct.
Amazing. So, and this is the interesting part because a lot of we talk a lot about empathy and leadership and how you have to genuinely care about your team, but I see a lot of leaders apply that with a little bit of lip service, or there might be some conditions attached. I really care about my team members for as long as they can deliver to the team or contribute to the team or contribute to me, versus what you're saying is empathy is unconditional. I'm
It
doing
is
what's right.
unconditional. So is compassion.
Yeah.
We're talking about human beings. In fact, I tell people it is my responsibility to know when you walk in the door that can tell your chin is an inch lower, that something's bothering you,
Yeah.
or your behavior is just a little off, and it's my responsibility to approach you and say, how can I help you?
Mm.
It's none of my business, but how can I help you? I
Yeah.
sense something's going on. And because the one thing I can give them is time. If
Yeah.
they have a sick child or a sick spouse or a sick aunt or uncle or parent, I can give them the ability to take care of that. I don't,
Yeah.
they're going to see me as someone who is different. And I've done that. A couple of years ago, I had a woman who worked for me. She was a single mom, and she was busting her butt all for months. And it was the middle of the summer, and I knew she was a single mom. And I said to her, you need to take time off to be with your son. And she said, well, I can't. I said, well, it's Wednesday. You're leaving, and you're going to go spend the rest of the week with your son. And she said, but I don't have PTO time. And I said, yes, you do. I'm not charging you PTO time. I'm sending you to go take time to be with your child before they have to go back to school. It is
Yeah.
unfair to them that you've been working 12 hours a day or 10 hours a day.
Mm.
And she thought about it for a minute. She said, can I ask one favor? And I said, what's that? She said, can I do it next week? She said, I do have things I want to get done, but I truly cannot express how thankful I am that you've noticed that and what you're offering me. But I really would like to get this cleaned up before I have it. I don't want to take that time and be disconnected. I want to
Mm.
focus on my son at that point. And I said, you got a deal.
Mm.
And she took that time off. And when she came back, she had the biggest smile on her face. But I knew that that had to be bothering her. She was working so hard and she wasn't taking the time that she needed. That's what we have to do as leaders.
Well, it means it's a great example, Jim, of leading the whole person, not just leading the title, leading the role that the person does, and thinking that everything they do is for the benefit of the company. You've got to understand that people are human beings and they've got a lot of stuff going on, and particularly in the day and age of we have now with technology and the connectedness that we have. um, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's stuff that, like, the work home life is sort of all intertwined now. So it's not really home and work. It's like, it's just life. So
Yeah, and
how to balance that?
Mr. Perot had it right because not only did he take care of the people when they were ill, if you had an employee that had a death in the immediate family, their leader was responsible for going there and taking care of the family during that time, much like the military does when they
Hmm.
lose somebody. And that comes from his military experience. And so there were a few funerals that I had to go attend and be with the family and
Mm.
camp out for a couple of days to make sure that their needs were being taken care of.
Yeah.
And it changes you. It makes you a different person when you step into roles like that.
Well, it does, and it's very. I must say, it's very uncorporate. It's because corporate as a, and I've been in corporate 20 plus years. It's very clinical. It's almost free of, let's just say, feelings, right? They think, well, we don't have compassion here. We don't have empathy here. It's just nose to the grindstone to get stuff done. But doing that sort of stuff and bringing the human side to leadership, it actually then creates the feeling within the workforce that, hey, my leader genuinely cares about me because I'm a human being, so I will now do anything that I can to help them. Now, we don't do it for that, but that's the benefit of that.
That is absolutely correct.
Yeah.
That is absolutely correct. And I don't say that I go out of my way to make sure that that happens, but it has become natural to me to behave that way
Mm,
and to manage that way and to make sure that people know that I'm doing the right thing
yeah.
or I'm doing what I think is the right thing.
Beautiful. So I want people to get hold of the book. So I'm not going to go through all six of these. I do want to touch on one more though, because people listen to this, hopefully they've got a sense of, yes, we need to have integrity, and there might be some thinking about, oh, these are all the soft skills. What about the hard and fast, get shit done sort of stuff, drive results? And being in sales, we are as successful as what the scoreboard basically says. So can we talk about focus? And you talk about empathy and compassion, which is all about the care, but with that, you need to have focus, you need to drive high standards, and you also talk about building high performing teams in terms of fostering trust, collaboration, accountability. But from a leadership point of view, it's all well and good to love our people and have them following and having great satisfaction surveys from employees. But at the end of the day, business is there to drive a profit for shareholders, and we need to drive results, which does require leaders to have a level of focus. Can you just
That is
explore
correct.
that for us as well?
So focus is extremely important because in my view, when everything outside of that work environment is stable, you should be able to commit and focus specifically on the tasks that you're assigned or the role that you have. And I measure in it's sales, it's pretty easy, but I have a list of KPIs that I manage salespeople by, which may end up being a book. Who knows? But I have this theory that the book's going to be called "The Numbers Never Lie,"
Hmm.
and we can get into that in another podcast. But the focus is extremely important. I heard a story once about the Jeff Bezos in the early days of Amazon. You know, he started out just selling books on the internet,
Mm.
and now he owns a grocery store, and you can get anything you want delivered to your house. But in the early days, when they were in one city and they had customer service in one building, they had a very poor reputation for customer service. And he knew that if he didn't focus on fixing it, they would never succeed. So instead of telling his direct report who oversaw customer service, he said, I'm going to go there and I'm going to sit and watch.
Hmm.
And he put a desk in the center of the room in the customer service department for months, listening, watching, observing, and then reworking the entire operation. I would think that he should have been able to delegate that, but he saw that unless he gave it that focus
Mm.
and nothing else, it wouldn't he would not be happy with the net result.
Yeah.
And one could listen to this today and still say, well, they have crappy customer service because you can never get anybody on the phone to talk to, which is true. But they're really a technology company trying to get things to your door quicker.
Yes.
But and I'm not trying to defend them, but they do try to make it as easy as possible. But it is very difficult to get somebody on the telephone. But it's that focus that then got him to a success point that he could turn it back over to somebody else.
Mm.
And so you and I in our daytime jobs, when we're not being super leadership heroes, you know, we have to provide that same level of focus. And I also think we have to provide the same level of stability,
Mm.
which I think goes hand in hand because your team has to be able to see you perform and behave the same way. Somebody asked me the other day, do you treat everybody the same way, whether you like them or not? I
Yeah.
said, absolutely, you do.
Yeah.
You don't have a choice. I mean,
Mm.
otherwise, it's technically discrimination, but you
Totally.
absolutely do.
Yeah.
Now, I do know that there's some people I can joke with a little bit differently than others. And I know some people are a little bit more sensitive or whatever, but you absolutely have to be stable. I mean, if the ship is sinking and you're the leader, you can't be the first one in the rescue boat, right? Or if the floor's on fire, you're the last one out, ensuring
Mm.
everybody else gets out. If you're the type of leader that says, hell no, I'm getting out first,
Mm.
that's not a leader.
That's it. That's it. The leader goes last. As in Simon Sinek says, what's his title of the book? Leaders eat last. So they're always last. Um, and I love that. So people listening to this, what we're talking about here is you've got to have impeccable integrity, you've got to have compassion, you've got to have empathy, but you've also got to drive really high standards and keep people to those standards. You're doing that because you genuinely care about them. So these are not separated in isolation. You've got to have all of these in place to be an effective leader to drive high performance, is what we're saying.
And I truly believe that. And I look at all the teams that I've led, and as I've evolved as a leader, and I can pinpoint times where, even in challenging times where we were downsizing, I- there's a way to do it with compassion and empathy to ease people and to offer assistance. I mean,
Mm,
just because you have to cut people for budget or financial reasons doesn't mean you become inhuman or you no longer respect them or you no longer would help them.
yeah,
I mean, I would never turn my back on them. And any former employee, I would always take their call. I would
yeah,
always help them. I worked at a company a few years back, and this one individual was let go. And he reached out to me and he asked me if I would help him. And I not only helped him, I gave him actually a list of 2,000 recruiters that he could go call that I happened to have collected. And I did some other things. And about 5 months later, he called me and he said, I just want to tell you, I reached out to a lot of leaders when I was displaced. He said, you're the only one who helped me. And I was a little embarrassed to be that he considered those people leaders when they turned their back on him.
yeah, yeah.
And that's not stability. That's not doing the same thing. You now treated him as an outsider when he was once a peer.
It's it's interesting that you say that because it all comes back to, and you started this conversation with the words that the person when you're going into public office ask you to ask yourself after every single day, and it's obvious that you've lived your entire life up until this point with that at the forefront of your mind, which has meant that you've done everything with a position of integrity. And if somebody reaches out to you, you're going to be there to help them, right? You didn't have to do that. But it also brings into question, I guess, the leadership narrative that we have in society right now, in that a lot of it is conditional. So I will lead you for as long and as so long as you are useful to me versus no, I'm going to lead people because it's the right thing to do. And that means maybe I'll have to have a difficult conversation. Maybe I'll have to give them the hand of friendship. Maybe I'll have to give them a hand up, right? Not necessarily a hand out, but a hand up because it's the right thing to do. And I mean, that sort of feedback is staggering to me. It doesn't surprise me, but it's staggering to think that out of a number of people that could have helped, you were the only one that did, which says that you are a man who lives according to the values that you have created and you talk about, which is in and leads with integrity because it's the right thing to do. And you don't do it because you get the accolades. You do it because it's the right thing to do because of how you make people feel. It's not about you. It's about them. And that's a legacy. So that's incredible. And it's a great way to finish this podcast. So if people are listening to this, um, you're going to be tested, but always do the right thing.
Always, always. There's no alternative.
No, it's and no, it's just do the right thing. It's just
Just do the right thing. It's not complex.
no, but it is profound. It is profound. And as you were talking through that, I'm actually I was reflecting on my own experiences in corporate, and I left corporate 10 years ago, and the number of leaders that I worked with who I have since chosen not to stay connected with because I had question marks over their integrity because there were conditions attached to whether they had integrity or not. So I've distanced myself from those people, which is interesting.
Yep. And somebody once asked me, when does leadership start each day? Does it start when you get to your desk? Does it start when you start the car or get into the parking lot? And I said, no, it starts when your feet hit the floor.
That's it. That's
And
it.
it doesn't stop till your feet get back in bed.
No.
Because
It,
at every point you turn around, there's an opportunity to have an impact on somebody's life.
it's funny you should say that. And I say to leaders all the time that you've got to understand. Remember the movie The Truman Show with Jim Carrey? And he was in the reality show that he didn't know, but he had a camera following his every move. And I use that as an analogy for leaders to say, you've got a camera following you the whole time. And you don't need to have a microphone, but if people were watching that video, are they going to be able to see the values that you say are important to you? So you're always
Very
on.
true.
You're always
Ve-
on.
Very, very true. Very, very true.
So, Jim, this has been a phenomenal conversation. For people listening to this who like to learn more about you and connect with you, but specifically get access to your book, The Six Pillars of Effective Leadership, A Roadmap to Success, which has got a beautiful copy over your left shoulder there on your bookshelf. Where can they connect and where can they get a copy of the book?
So they can get a copy of the book. It is distributed via Amazon and
Okay.
Kindle. So it's available there worldwide. Barnes and Noble carries it. There's also a company that's called books.buy, and then you do slash Jim Carlough, and they have a flat rate $5 shipping anywhere in the world.
Okay. Nice.
Um, and yes, and or they can come to my website, and I would gladly take care of them as well. And that website is www.jimcarlough, all connected.com.
Perfect. And is it okay if I put your LinkedIn profile up there as well so people can connect on LinkedIn?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if anybody has questions or after the show is published and you want to make comments and or reach out to me, I'm open to discussions. I'm human. I don't like to talk at 2 in the morning. I like my sleep, but I can make time for you.
Awesome, awesome, excellent. Well, I'll put all that on the show notes. And once again, thank you for being a great guest. It's been a great conversation, and thanks for being on the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast, Jim.
Well, thank you for having me. I was glad to be here.
Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com, and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.